Hi, welcome to Revive Ministries podcast. This month is Remembering Our Wellness, a tribute to Mental Health Awareness Month. We as human nature have incredible capacity to forget. Just look at our calendars. They're marked up with a lot of things because a lot of times we forget a lot. Mental health is always near and dear to me since I am a peer living with mental illness for over 2 decades. Today we have a new guest, and I'm excited. Her name is Karen, and she'll be sharing a little bit more insight and her story today. I just want to say thank you, Karen. Thank you for joining us, sharing your. It's never easy, Like some people, like, oh, you share your story all the time. Sometimes it's hard because it's very vulnerable, very sensitive. Thank you again, Karen.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Karen Schrebeck. I am a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorder and bulimia. And for me, that means I haven't used drugs and alcohol for 38 years, and I have been bulimic for about 34 years. And I credit my loving God for my path in recovery.
Yeah, for me, faith has been a huge part of my recovery. I don't proselytize on my podcast, but I would say this: purpose-driven recovery is always, I find, more sustainable. So before we begin, I'd like to do a disclaimer. Those who are out there who are in crisis, please call 1-800-273-8255. It's a national suicide prevention lifeline. When we talk about mental health awareness month, a lot of times it's all about the lack of resources. But I just know that talking about it can help, displaying the importance of it, because it's not about statistics or numbers. It's about the people and the faces behind them. I just want to give, a lot of times I do a quote, but this time I want Karen to share a little bit about her story with us today before we begin. And so, Karen, would you mind sharing a little bit about your journey of recovery and your story with us? Thank you.
Thank you. So I was the firstborn in a very traditional Eastern European family, and I was supposed to be a boy. And so I grew up already thinking that I wasn't good enough. And so that feeling of not being good enough is a huge part of my story. So when I was about 11, I was really fat, and I discovered that, and I love to eat because my mom was a great cook, and I discovered that I could binge and purge.
Mm-hmm.
And also the doctor at the time gave me some little black pills to help me not eat so much. And so that set off my disease of substance use disorder. And from there, I had 2 failed marriages. I really almost killed myself. I used to not feel. I used for many years. I used from like the age of 11 until I was almost 30. My disease was killing me.
Yeah.
I hated myself. I had no hope. And I was married at the time to a Vietnam veteran who I was trying to save. And through the course of that, my higher power used that gentleman to help me find my way into recovery.
Yeah.
And I got into a 12-step fellowship, and I've been in it ever since. 38 years later, I still use the steps. I still really pay attention to my stress level. I used a lot to expend stress. I used a lot to keep my energy up. I like speedy stuff, and I like to be skinny. And when I hit my bottom in 1982, I was 89 pounds, soaking wet, and just a mess. I was suicidal, really. I hated myself. And I found a recovery path that worked for me because it encompassed all the symptoms of my disorder. And so it has been for me a long process at times in getting better, in getting wellness. I take personal responsibility for my wellness today. There's certain things that I must do to that, because I I work in the field, and so I see a lot of people that don't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
My former mentor, who passed away when she was 80 years old, taught me that, we must learn how to be good to ourselves. And it doesn't mean buying a silk blouse.
Yeah.
It means, really nurturing my spirit, nurturing wellness, nurturing recovery, maintaining my recovery, making sure I show up where I'm supposed to, make sure I do all the things that allow me to stay in the recovery process. And I value that very much. I'm here to tell you recovery is possible. It doesn't matter how much you've used or how destructive you've been or what your path has been. Your past can be an asset once you hit the doors of recovery. And that's what my recovery has been. I've taken those things that were terribly shameful and turned it into an asset that I openly share, my shame. I share, the antidote for shame is humility. And so I'm never hesitant to share my story to help somebody else, because in the long run, it helps me as well.
Yeah. And, I was just thinking of my own, I'm a peer facilitator for NAMI. I do support groups. And one thing that I noticed just being a peer myself is I don't feel heard. A lot of times, like, especially in the thick of it, you don't feel heard. And that's why I think this quote really stuck to me. And this blindly, just going to ask you your thoughts on it. And it says, one of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listen to what another has to say. I thought it sounds rudimentary, but a lot of us struggle with it, So any thoughts you would like to share?
So I like to practice mindfulness in my relationships. And part of that is to really pay attention. It's easy to be distracted. It's easy to be, playing, talking to somebody. And that is disrespectful. When I go to a mutual aid meeting, I don't play on my phone. I listen. And I do the best that I can listening. Active listening is a component of coaching that I learned when I became a recovery coach. And so it not only shows respect, but it shows unconditional love and care when you really listen, when you take the time with people.
Yeah.
The time is equally important as having active listening skills.
And, in NAMI, we have the parental support. It's a lot of times when I was a peer and, I thought that was for only us. But it's surprising how much people are bad at supporting each other. And one of the ways is, like we're talking about, listening. I just know that I may not agree with someone, but listening to them helps. Not only him, but helps me. It's crazy. Like I might not agree with their logic or what they're saying, but a lot of times there's so much stress, so much anxiety, so much going on. They just need to diffuse it. And sometimes those safe places, either a support group or being you're a coach, you could be there just to be that ear. I feel listen can be one of the major ways to remembering, even on our own recovery, not just theirs, and having that balance, those boundaries. It's very easy to get emotionally fatigued. Compassion fatigue is a big thing, but understanding the balance and that recovery looks different for everyone. And I just love the idea of a purpose-driven approach to it. I know. Any thoughts? Anything you want to comment on that, or bounce back, or it kind of falls in line of what you experienced?
Well, I do want to share really quickly. So more than 20 years ago, I had the opportunity to work and live in Japan. Before I went over, I took Japanese lessons. And the thing about learning Japanese is that everything is really divulged at the end of the sentence. Question, whether it's present tense, past tense, it's very different from English. And so learning Japanese taught me to be a better listener. I really had to pay attention to the speaker till the very end of the sentence, not think about what I would respond, but really listen to see what it was really going to be about. And so that was one thing that really helped me improve my listening skills.
When I was, I went to the military during 9/11. I was 2000, 2004. One of the books authors I'd like to read was Ernest Hemingway, Florida, you know. But I wasn't in Florida at the time. But one of his books, you know, was it, Farewell to Arms. There's this one back and forth, and I thought it was very telling because the people in recovery will understand it. Veterans like myself will understand it. Who is that on the trench by your side, and does it matter more than the war itself? I feel for me a lot of times there's a lot of uncertainty, and maybe that's, you know, and we may be focusing on, we might be diving in the internet saying, oh, only if I did this or that. But really, it's the people you surround yourself with. It's the recovery, like the things that the coping skills that you built up all this time. Those things matter more than understand, because there's the one constant in life is change. You know, right now we're going through a pandemic. There's polarizing thoughts. But one thing that is not ever going to change is change. There's going to continue. It's not going to stay where it's at. Every day can't be a crisis situation. There's this, you know, there's a difference between, I would say, maintaining your recovery and living through recovery. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but when I'm in crisis, I need to go to the hospital. It's just like if I broke my bone, I'm not going to say I'm going to try to fix it. Like, I know some people might, but I would say I will get the help, professional help I need. But at the end, every day is not a crisis situation too. So kind of having that balanced approach moving forward. Anything you want to comment on this quote or anything else that we talked about?
So I feel very blessed that I do have people in the trenches with me.
Yes.
I have mentors. I have friends. I have a husband that's supportive. I have a lot of love in my life. I have 2 sisters, you know, now that our parents are gone, for each other. You know, my family has become part of the folks in the trenches with me. I didn't have that, but my recovery, the process of amends that I have made, my recovery, the healing that has happened as a result of my recovery has widened the trenches for me with. But not only that, speaking to the change, you know, I see a lot of collateral damage from the pandemic. A lot of things, you know, some relationships haven't made it through the pandemic. And while that's very sad, you know, for me, I have to get to a place of acceptance with that. So I don't necessarily like the outcome, but I have to keep moving forward.
Exactly.
And so for me, it's important that I fall back onto the people that I know are there for me no matter what. And I have a higher power that I believe has my back no matter what. Like, been through so many things in my life, especially since recovery. That higher power has shown up for me in ways that I could never have imagined.
I guess, you know, just to touch on faith, you know, for me, it's like I've been saying, the one constant in life is change, and also constant in life is changing people, right? But with my faith, you know, God doesn't change, and that's the one reassuring thing, and that's the one thing that I guess it, you know, in some, you know, there's some hymns that say He is my anchor. He's the one that stays still, and it's always be there. And for me, I find much comfort from that. You know, for me, I don't use this podcast to really proselytize, because I know people come from all different cultures and backgrounds, but at the same time, I always encourage purpose-driven. Find what your why is. It can't be every day, I'm not going to drink today, and that's all my recovery goal is. It has to be more. You have to fill it in with something. The holistic approach is very important. And on top of that, it's when we talk about our trenches and uncertainty and all this stuff, we also have to mention that um, our community. There's one person, one of my guests. She worked in New York as a social worker, New York City. She worked with a homeless person for several years. He's been homeless for decades, and he asked her, "What was the hardest thing being homeless in New York City?" And she, social work. She had all the things that she knew what to say, and he literally said, "No, loneliness. That was it. That was the hardest thing." And we need each other more than we'd like to admit a lot of times. I want to ask you this kind of lends to the same thing. How important is community and support when it comes to recovery in your field of work or in your own personal life? What would you say?
So I've learned it's been said that the opposite of substance use disorder is connection. Mm-hmm. And so that connection is what helps to build the guardrails for me to stay in my pathway. Mm-hmm. The more I've moved from the people that I used to use with, the people that were a negative influence, and put positive people in my life, in my path, it's critical to me. There's no more, and one of the most important factors in staying in recovery is that community. Whatever it is, whether it's a 12-step community, whether it's a faith-based community, whether, I was working with somebody that she found her community in politics. Yeah. And it worked for her. Yeah. She's still in the recovery pathway, even though she doesn't mutual aid meetings. She came up with her own system of what works for her. And that's what, in the work that I do, it's important to meet people where they're at. Yes. And be supportive and open the door to a community. I'm the executive director of a recovery community organization called Volusia Recovery Alliance. We're a peer-driven organization. And so part of what we do is give the community a recovery community. Yeah. Connected to the recovery community. But we're also, by virtue of what we're doing, we are a recovery community. And that works for you, fine. We'll help you find whatever works for you. There's multiple pathways. Yeah. Not one thing anymore. There's a lot of pathways. I remember this older lady in church. She said it this way, told me, and it struck me. She said, "People can be blessings or lessons in life. Cherish each one." I thought it was very true. There's people that I don't really like to be around, but I learned a lot from them, extremely about myself and everything else. I thought it was an important lesson. Speaking about lessons, what lessons have you learned both personally and professionally that you won't want to forget? We're talking about remembering our wellness this month. So what lessons would you want to share those listening when it comes to mental health, recovery, anything, substance use, anything you would like to share? Well, for me, one of the things that I stand on is where there's breath, there's hope. And that we don't give up on people. I'm married to a man that had 21 treatment failures from heroin use. And today he's got 36 years of recovery. Yeah. There were people in his life that did give up on him, but he didn't give up on himself. And there was people in his circle that didn't give up on him. And his recovery got launched. Also that. So professionally, I stand on where there's breath, there's hope. And if you want to try recovery, I will help you get there. That is my purpose. You talked about having purpose-driven recovery. And I believe that my purpose is to help the next struggling person find their recovery, because it means so much to me to be in recovery. I wouldn't even be here anymore if I didn't find recovery. Yes. Has it been easy every day? No. But it's worth it. It is worth it. And recovery is possible, and not a lot of people know that. And I think it does help when we focus it as a journey versus a destination, because then it's these only if statements that
May work, may not, but you put it for me. It's more of a healthy um, attitude, mindset. And it always goes back to remembering. And why I say this because Mental Health Month is important because of the people impacted. That's it. We make it so complicated, but I've lost people. I've experienced being a peer, seeing my peers struggle. It matters because of the people. Let's not make it difficult. Karen, what would you like to tell people listening? We're just wrapping up. I just want to thank you so much for sharing as much as you have, and it's just wonderful to have people so dedicated. For me, I'll just say real quick, helping people became my healing. Serving became my recovery. So, with that being said, what would you like to tell people listening today?
I think it's important to remember or to know that every human being at some point in their life needs help. Absolutely okay to ask for help, no matter what you're going through. Because there is somebody more than likely that you can meet that's been there. That's the basis of the whole peer movement, is we've been on that. And, we can extend a hand to help you get out of the quagmire that you're in, per se. But I think it's important just to remember that self-care is not optional. And that for those of us with the disease of substance use disorder, it is a disease of amnesia. It's really easy to forget where we're from. And that by serving others, we get to remember, oh, I was there once.
Yeah.
And that's the importance of sharing with the people that are newer to recovery, is that it does remind us where we come from.
I just want to say thank you, Karen. All the information about your peer coalition and all that, just let me know and I'll put it in the notes. For those listening, you'll see that if you want to reach out. Thank you again for being a guest today. I just want to shift over and just remind everyone listening that you can go to reviveministriesfl.com on our website, or we're on Facebook and Instagram. Also, this is goodbye from Revive Ministries Podcast, leaving you with this last quote. Martin Luther King Day was in February. This is going to be uploaded in May, but I do love this quote. He writes, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward." Martin Luther King Jr.